Noticing something amiss, I held my breath. The display screen remained powered on. Just a moment ago, I was video chatting with my mother-in-law, who lives far away, showing my 3-year-old son. As we exchanged warm farewells.
Thank you as always. Show me my grandson's face again via video call.
But the call didn't disconnect as expected, and her face continued to appear on the screen. She must have accidentally left it connected. Curiosity got the better of me. What did my mother-in-law do during her daily life? I watched the screen, taking advantage of her unawareness. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind her. Wait, she lives alone. What's going on? As the figure came into focus on the screen, I gasped. My heart raced. Without hesitation, I blurted out. Hey! Behind you.
Huh?
I'm Mary, a former homemaker with a 3-year-old child. This former part comes from my divorce. My ex-husband Kevin is an absolute scoundrel. Marrying him was nothing but a youthful indiscretion. How much happiness did I really have during those years of marriage? Even if there were moments, they didn't belong to Kevin and me. They flowed between my son and me. When our child was born, Kevin wasn't there. He was busy gambling. When he finally arrived at the hospital, he tried to touch the baby with his dirty hands straight from gambling, which led to a huge argument. We caused a lot of trouble for the doctors and nurses, and I still feel sorry about it whenever I think back. Afterward, my husband continued to show little interest in our son's growth. He'd go gambling or head to the bar without spending quality time with our son. When he did interact, it was sporadic, just giving our son random snacks he'd impulsively bought. But what good is that for a baby still sleeping in a crib? Even if he had worked, things might have been a bit better, but all the money Kevin used for his fun was earned by me. No matter how angry I got, he would take cash from my wallet. When he couldn't find any money, he would just drink himself into a stupor at home. I considered divorce multiple times, but Kevin stubbornly resisted, saying,
"Why should I give up the ATM?"
If it were just me, I could disappear from Kevin's life and start anew. But with a child, it's complicated. My parents have already passed away, and I can't afford a lawyer. There's no one to rely on. So, I swallowed my tears, sent my young son to kindergarten, and worked as an office clerk during the day and at a bar at night. Even if it meant losing some money in the process. But it was my mother-in-law who rescued me from that wretched life. One day, Kevin uttered the most despicable words I'd ever heard.
"Hey, Mary, where's the money? I slipped up. Got a woman pregnant, huh? Damn, she got knocked up so easily. Is she a kid starving? Anyway, hand over about $3,000 to get rid of the brat. I'll figure it out somehow."
What was this guy thinking? His lack of sincerity extended not only toward me but also toward the woman and child. Why should I clean up your mess after your affair? I don't have any money. And what do you think of the child's life? You casually create a child out of your selfish desires, treating it like trash to be discarded. Do you even know what responsibility or guilt means? My impassioned response didn't faze Kevin. He continued rummaging through bags and drawers. I can't stay with him any longer. Who can I turn to now? At that moment, I recalled someone who might be able to help, Kevin's mother. Although their relationship was strained due to Kevin's troublesome behavior, we had exchanged greetings once during our marriage. When our son was born, I even sent her a letter. She was the only person I felt I could consult, given our shallow connection. There was a chance she was just as difficult as Kevin, but my life was already in the negative. I couldn't afford any more risks. With a glimmer of hope, I dialed her number. After brief pleasantries, I shared my concerns about Kevin. My mother-in-law sighed deeply.
He never changes.
A silence followed. Honestly, I knew she hadn't replied to my letter when our son was born, so I sensed she wanted to avoid involvement with Kevin and the people associated with him. Perhaps it's hopeless. Just as I was about to give up, she spoke again.
It can't be helped. I don't want anything to do with that son of mine, but it's for the sake of my adorable grandson. I'll step in.
Her words brought tears to my eyes. I didn't know the specifics yet, but having someone on my side felt like a rare blessing.
I'll come over tomorrow. Keep Kevin at home somehow.
And with that, she hung up the phone. While I'm grateful that she's coming over, I wonder what her plan is. Despite my anxiety, I followed my mother-in-law's advice and kept Kevin at home. If you stay home today, I'll consider the abortion money, I told him. I hated saying something so despicable, but it was the only way to prevent Kevin from going out again. Around midday, my mother-in-law arrived. Kevin complained when he saw her.
Why's the old hag here?
He glared at me.
Aren't you the one who knows the reason best?
She fixed a disdainful gaze on Kevin, likely the first time she'd seen him in a while. From her bag, she pulled out a brown envelope and a divorce form. There was something written on the paper.
This envelope contains $20,000. It sickens me to give part of the inheritance to you who didn't even attend your dad's funeral. But I'll give you this money on some conditions. Divorce Mary. Never show your face again, stay away from the child, and don't ask for money. Promise these 3 things. This document outlines it all. Sign it, and then you're free to go wherever you want.
I had no idea what my mother-in-law was planning, but the fact that she was willing to give part of my father-in-law's inheritance to Kevin made me uneasy. I wanted to stop her, but she shook her head when I tried.
Seriously? That's great.
Kevin, who had been grumpy when my mother-in-law arrived, suddenly brightened up. He filled out the divorce form with a sense of joy. Without bothering to read the covenant, he signed it and then checked the contents of the brown envelope.
All right, there's definitely $20,000 here. Good for you, Mary. Now you're free from me. I'm thrilled to cut ties with a woman who can't even earn money properly. Well, take care of the kid, I guess.
With that, Kevin happily left the house. It hadn't even been 30 minutes since my mother-in-law arrived. Could it be true that I had finally separated from Kevin? The reality hadn't quite sunk in, but I needed to express my gratitude and apologize to my mother-in-law. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry. I never expected you to give Kevin money, especially from my father-in-law's inheritance. I promise I'll repay it. My mother-in-law raised her palm to stop me and shook her head.
Didn't I tell you? I did it for my grandson. Honestly, if it were just you, I wouldn't have helped. Besides, falling for someone like Kevin is beyond me. And he won't understand words. Money and the law are all that matter. So don't worry about it.
With those words, my mother-in-law approached my son.
Hello. How are you?
They chatted for a while. I took the opportunity to ask my mother-in-law about her well-being. It appears that my mother-in-law has been living alone in her house since my father-in-law passed away. Given that Kevin is her only son, it's a natural arrangement. After about 15 minutes of small talk, my mother-in-law stood up, preparing to leave. She addressed me.
All right, I'll be going now. Since you've separated from Kevin, we probably won't see each other again. From now on, reclaim the time you lost with him and find happiness.
Taken aback by her words, I couldn't help but say, "Wait. I still don't know how to properly thank you, and honestly, there's no need to sever ties just because I've broken things off with Kevin. If you're open to it, would you consider living with us?" Looking back, it seems like a rather presumptuous suggestion. It wouldn't be surprising if she thought I was trying to make her pay to break up with Kevin and then live together to save on rent. My mother-in-law didn't seem to interpret it that way, though.
Thank you.
She replied, but she wasn't enthusiastic about living together. She continued.
The best way to repay me is by raising my adorable grandson well. It's not about returning money. I appreciate your kind offer for cohabitation, but I don't want to part with my house. Besides, where I live is too rural to consider my grandson's future. So, let's continue as we have been.
With those words, my mother-in-law left. Since then, my life has been surprisingly comfortable, almost like a dream compared to what it used to be. However, there's still one thing that bothers me: my mother-in-law. Indeed, ensuring my son grows up well is a way to repay her kindness, as she mentioned. But when I wondered if there was more I could do, the term remote work caught my attention while watching TV. This is it. My mother-in-law genuinely cares about my son. If possible, she'd like to witness his growth. So, I decided to gift her a computer to enable video calls. Surprisingly, I managed to give her the gift promptly. Since my work routine remained unchanged, day and night, I saved significantly more money without Kevin around. I visited her home to set up the computer and internet. Initially, she tried to decline.
You don't need to go through all this trouble.
But I insisted. Isn't raising my son well the best way to repay you? It wouldn't make sense if you couldn't see that. And so, I persuaded her. Even my mother-in-law couldn't resist the desire to see her adorable grandson. As proof, she was delighted that with video calls, she could use earphones to adjust the volume and hear her grandson's voice better, despite her slight hearing loss. Since then, I've been having video calls with my mother-in-law 2 or 3 times a month. I think our relationship has deepened compared to before. One day, my mother-in-law confided in me.
Lately, I've been forgetting things more often.
Even though my mother-in-law is still quite healthy, she is getting older. It's not surprising that such things could happen. However, I've heard that worrying too much can actually make things worse due to stress. I conveyed this to her. You shouldn't worry too much. But it seems the situation is more serious than I thought. According to her, she struggles to recall what she spent money on, and her calculations don't add up. She misplaces accessories and can't remember where she put them. Given the distance between our homes, it's challenging for me to check everything with her. Still, I wanted to find a way to be helpful. So, I propose that she send me messages when she spends money or removes accessories. That way, I can help her remember and check during our video calls. As expected, my mother-in-law hesitated.
You don't need to go to such lengths.
But I've learned how to break through her reluctance over these past few months. So, I reassured her. It's really not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Eventually, she accepted my suggestion. It seems that my mother-in-law herself worries about experiencing more severe forgetfulness in the future. I might have taken advantage of her anxiety a bit, but my desire to repay my benefactor is only natural. It might seem presumptuous, but if I don't do this much, my mother-in-law won't rely on me. However, in the end, this method didn't really solve the problem. Although the frequency of forgetfulness has decreased, she still struggles with mismatched finances and losing accessories.
I wonder if I might even forget to send you those memo messages. What should I do? At this rate, I might misplace important things like bank books or credit cards.
Without the reliable demeanor she had when helping me separate from Kevin, my mother-in-law is now overwhelmed by anxiety. So, I suggested, let's go to the hospital together. There should be treatments available for forgetfulness now. That's probably the most I can do. If my mother-in-law is indeed beginning to experience cognitive decline, I'm prepared to support her until the end. She seemed to understand my sincerity.
Thank you. Well then, please.
And with that, she proposed ending today's video call. As she moved to disconnect, I noticed her image still on my computer screen. While I could easily end the call, I admit I was curious about my mother-in-law's daily life at home. The house where my mother-in-law lives is spacious and has an old, traditional design. Perhaps because she lives alone, she tends to leave the room doors wide open. As a result, even through my computer's camera, I catch glimpses of the interior. I find myself thinking, what a large house. Curious, I observed my mother-in-law's daily life for a while. Suddenly, I notice movement beyond my mother-in-law. Someone else is there. Initially, I wondered if it was a glitch due to the internet connection, but it's definitely a person. This figure moves stealthily from room to room, avoiding detection by my mother-in-law. And then it hits me, it's Kevin. He rummages through drawers, pocketing my mother-in-law's accessories and money. I can't let this continue. Hey. Behind you. It seemed that during the earlier video call, she had turned up the volume on her earphones quite high, so even without them, she heard my voice and was startled, asking,
What?
But Kevin also reacts.
Oh no.
My mother-in-law turns around, locking eyes with Kevin.
You fool. You're straying from the path of decency. What are you thinking?
She shouted this as she stood up and chased after Kevin. I couldn't just stand by, so I called 911. I explained to the police that I was on a video call with my mother-in-law and described the situation, requesting officers to be dispatched to the scene. As a result, Kevin was apprehended by the responding officers and taken to the station. During the interrogation, Kevin revealed his home address, where some of my mother-in-law's jewelry was found. These were all items she thought she had lost, and from the messages between my mother-in-law and me, we were able to prove that Kevin had taken them from her house. From his confession to the police, it was discovered that Kevin had repeatedly taken money and jewelry from my mother-in-law's house. The reason for his actions was that he was being extorted. Apparently, the woman Kevin had impregnated had a boyfriend who was in a gang. When the boyfriend found out about the abortion, Kevin was severely beaten. Moreover, He continued to be extorted for compensation, and the $20,000 he received from my mother-in-law quickly disappeared. To pay the gang, he repeatedly visited my mother-in-law's house to take money and valuables. By the way, the reason Kevin didn't come to my house was because he thought it would be troublesome due to the affidavit, and he believed I didn't have any money. The reason I didn't have money before was because of Kevin, but now I have some savings. Why doesn't he realize that it was his fault I didn't have money? Also, it seems that Kevin's arrest led to the arrest of the gang as well. After Kevin received a prison sentence, I visited him once with my mother-in-law. During that visit, Kevin begged my mother-in-law for forgiveness.
Mom, please forgive me. I was pressured into it, you know? Can't you withdraw the complaint even now? Please. This place is dangerous. Somehow, the person who pressured me is also incarcerated here, and I have no idea what might happen to me. It's a lifelong plea. After all, I'm the son you suffered to bring into this world. Surely you can't abandon me, right? Come on, change your heart. I'll write another affidavit or anything you want. So, please.
Hearing Kevin's insincere words, my mother-in-law let out a deep sigh.
Honestly, the fact that I went through the pain of childbirth only to end up with you is just a waste of suffering. You say you had no choice because you were being extorted, but if you had cherished Mary and your son and hadn't cheated, you wouldn't have gotten involved with a gang member's girlfriend in the first place. Getting a woman pregnant, being beaten by the gang, being extorted, and ending up in jail, all of it is your own fault. There's nothing unavoidable about any of it. Now, reflect on your actions quietly in jail.
With those words, my mother-in-law turned to me and said,
"Let's go."
And we left the visitation room. Epilogue. I had my mother-in-law undergo memory tests at the hospital just to be sure. As it turned out, her forgetfulness was indeed stress-related. Kevin's arrest meant no more stolen valuables, no more mismatched calculations, and no more lost jewelry. Gradually, her forgetfulness subsided. To this day, I maintain regular video calls with my mother-in-law. If I hadn't broken up with Kevin back then, my son might have become a criminal's child. In gratitude for shattering that possibility, I vowed to continue loving and raising my son well, repaying my debt to my mother-in-law.
How did you find this story? And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Until next time in our next video.